From the beautiful city of Los Angeles, California, we bring you the Gimme Three podcast. Hello and welcome, cinephiles, cinema lovers, movie appreciators, to the Gimme Three podcast, the show where we pick three films connected by one theme. I'm Nicholas Ybarra, and I'm joined as always by my brilliant co-host, Bella Efstratis. Bella, what is cooking today?
Oh, today we're diving into David Lynch, and I am so excited. I don't think I'm even ready for this episode, but I'm so excited.
So excited, and we just can't hide it. Here we go, guys. This is, as we all know, the cinephile community, we just lost an absolute legend earlier this month. One of the most unique, inventive, intuitive filmmakers to ever walk this planet. I'll just say it. I think one of the greatest artists, all stop, to ever walk this planet. And we are, of course, talking about David Lynch. And in today's episode, we are going to be diving into three of Lynch's most impactful films. His audacious debut in Eraserhead. We got the gripping alt-reality of the American dream in Blue Velvet. And then we've got the mind-bending mystery thriller Mulholland Drive. And we are going to be going hard in the paint on all of these films. So consider this your official spoiler alert. Although I'm not really sure that you can spoil a David Lynch film. We could tell you what's going to happen, but you really, have to experience it for yourself. It'd be like me trying to explain what being in love is like. It's like I got to explain what being in love is like, but you may not understand, you may not understand, but until you have fallen in love, you don't really know what falling in love is like.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even like if you were to read, for example, Blue Velvet's plot on Wikipedia, and then watch it, you'd be like, those are two different things.
Exactly. We lost Mr. Lynch on January 15th, 2025, and his death was not directly because of, but the recent LA wildfires may have played a part in the filmmaker's death. Deadline reported that Lynch, who had emphysema, his health took a turn for the worse after being forced to evacuate due to the Sunset Fire in the Hollywood Hills. So since the city is still reeling from these devastating fires, and since Lynch loved our city of Los Angeles so much, I thought I would start the episode by reading a quote from David Lynch about our great city. So here it goes. I arrived in LA at night. So it wasn't until the next morning when I stepped out of a small apartment on San Vicente Boulevard that I saw the light, and it thrilled my soul. I feel lucky to live with that light. I love Los Angeles. I know a lot of people go there and they just see a huge sprawl of sameness. But when you're there for a while, you realize that each section has its own mood. The golden age of cinema is still alive there, in the smell of jasmine at night and the beautiful weather. And the light is inspiring and energizing. Even with the smog, there's something about that light that's not harsh, but bright and smooth. And it fills me with the feeling that all possibilities are available. I don't know why. It's different from the light in other places. It was this light that brought everybody to LA to make films in the early days. And it's still a beautiful place. The city of LA loves you back, Mr. Lynch. And here at the Gimme Three podcast, we're just thrilled to be celebrating your films today. Now, for those who have not seen a David Lynch film, I'm sure you've heard about David Lynch, or you've heard the term Lynchian, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. I'm going to do my best to kind of put into words the experience of watching a David Lynch piece of work. And who knows? We may cut this because it's kind of hard to do. But
yeah,
his films kind of start by they pull you in with their breathtaking, beautiful, and sometimes horrific imagery. His tones and his mood building will just keep you glued to your seat. There's an innate sensuality and sexuality to his films that's always kind of both titillating and disturbing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps the greatest gift that I think Lynch gives to the medium, to all his audiences, and to me, I'll say it, is his films demand your intellect. Your intellect must come along for the ride. And in a world where there are, so many major institutions and these, now here comes the tinfoil hat, Nick, the billionaires with their social media apps, and at times even the film industry itself is kind of hell-bent on this zombification of society. A David Lynch movie slaps you in the face, it grabs you by the collar, and it says, wake up to this art that is in front of you, wake up to the world that is around you, and perhaps most importantly, wake up to the world that is inside of you,
Yes.
So we're going to have some fun today. But before we get into it, Bella, you were new to a lot of Lynch's work. Is there any overarching initial thoughts or things you want to get off of your chest? Have you started seeing a therapist since exploring this work?
Yep. No, yeah, this definitely has shifted my world watching his movies. And yeah, this was actually I had started Lost Highway with my cousins like a few years ago, but then I think I fell asleep or something, so I never got the chance to finish it. And that was supposed to be popping my David Lynch cherry right there. So, cut to a year later or something, I watched Blue Velvet for the first time. So and I wasn't ready for that. So I didn't revisit David Lynch again for a long time, until now, actually. And now I'm obsessed. I cannot get enough. I'm ready to watch all of them. I'm ready to start Twin Peaks. I'm excited. I'm excited for what lies ahead for me.
Work always has a little bit more of a different impact too when we know that the work is finite, when we know that there's no more coming from him. It just holds a little bit of a different weight. You're able to cherish it a little bit more, I think.
Definitely.
We'll tell everybody where we can watch the movies that we're talking about today as we go along. But for a pretty all-inclusive David Lynch experience right now, sign up for, if you don't already subscribe to it, the Criterion channel, the Criterion streaming service. They've got a David Lynch collection on there right now that is absolutely incredible. They've got a huge portion of his feature films. They've got a bunch of short films that he's made, including his very first one, which is essentially a moving painting. They've got a great documentary about him. It's called David Lynch, The Art Life. That is a very meditative, essentially hour and a half interview with David Lynch about him coming of age and coming into his being as an artist and finding his craft as a painter and finding his voice as an artist. That is a part of the collection also. And then because it's a Criterion channel, they've got just a plethora of excellent interviews and behind the scenes documentaries and bonus content on there as well. So, I mean, like you could literally spend after this episode, if you want to do a deep dive on David Lynch, the Criterion channel is the place to go. So there's that.
Oh my God. Yeah. Sounds amazing.
So anyways, enough of me and enough of this. Let's get into the good shit. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Gimme Three David Lynch films. Bella's going to start us off.
Starting with a David Lynch film that shook audiences to their very core in the year 1977. What began as a little midnight movie became one of cinema's greatest cult classics. Many, perhaps even most audiences, responded to the film with intense outrage and overwhelming confusion. But then there were those who loved it, who even flocked back to the theater over and over again in an attempt to crack the code or simply make something, anything of it all. And you may have guessed what this is. It is, of course, Lynch's striking atmospheric nightmare, Eraserhead. And don't get me wrong, when I say nightmare, that is obviously not a definitive answer of what this movie is. Aside from, Eraserhead's brilliant execution and trailblazing sound design, the film's status as one of David Lynch's most iconic works, and of course a true pillar of cinematic history, certainly stems from its relentless and confounding ambiguity. Lynch has given us, somewhat of a maybe simple story at face value that becomes all the more complex simply by just watching it. Any individual can take absolutely anything they want away from this film. And I like to think that your own interpretation of it is your reward for sitting through something just so powerfully unsettling and mystifying beyond belief. The film centers on an eccentric but aimless young man named Henry Spencer, whose vacation turns into a waking nightmare when his girlfriend Mary gives birth to a horrifying, deformed alien baby. The monstrous baby's never-ending screams curse the newlywed couple with sleepless nights, causing Mary to leave, abandoning Henry with their infant abomination. Tortured by the infant's constant screams, Henry spends most days just staring off into his radiator in his dark apartment, and strange and haunting images warp the screen. Are they really happening? Are they Henry's escapist daydreams or nightmares? These are just a few of the endless amount of questions that can come from watching Eraserhead. But before we kind of dive into our initial impressions of the film, I just wanted to give you guys some brief background on the making of it, because it has a pretty interesting history and origin story. So the initial concept for the film actually came from a daydream that David Lynch had of a small boy taking a man's head to a pencil factory, which we actually see at one point in the film randomly. And Lynch had pitched the Eraserhead script to AFI, but there were a few board members who were completely against it. They just weren't really into the idea of producing something this surreal. So we can all thank Dean Frank Daniel, who worked there, for threatening to resign if they didn't support David Lynch in making this film. So we may have never had Eraserhead without him. And like any movie, getting this made was no small feat. But the Eraserhead crew was really up against a wall, working with such a tiny team and very little funding and support. It actually took them 5 years to make this film, which is pretty crazy to think about. And, David Lynch donned pretty much every hat in the book working on this film: writing, directing, producing, editing. He even worked closely with the sound designer, Alan Splett, who helped create the film's iconic soundscape. The cinematography was initially helmed by Herb Cardwell, who was later replaced by Frederick Elms due to the financial issues that came with the film. But behind the scenes, production manager and prop technician Doreen Small, along with Catherine Coulson, who's actually the lead actor Jack Nance's wife, contributed tirelessly to keep this production running. And while AFI provided some initial funding for the film, it was ultimately Lynch's close-knit crew and his really close friends who kept the film afloat. So yeah, without Jack Nance, Catherine Coulson, director Jack Fisk, and his wife Sissy Spacek's donations, Eraserhead may never have made it to the silver screen. And yeah, the rest is history. So without further ado, because I've just rambled forever, Nick, what do you think of David Lynch's Eraserhead?
Well, if I may borrow one of your words, Bella.
Yeah.
The most iconic hair ever in a movie. Right?
100%.
Like, a lot of people have not seen this movie, but they know that image of this man with his hair sticking straight up like he's been electrocuted, and it looks kind of like an eraser. And they're like, oh, that's why it's called Eraserhead, because he's got that eraser hairdo. But they got that image of him like staring off into space, crazed, with his hair sticking up. And it's just like one of the most memorable images that the medium has ever produced.
Yeah.
This is the thing about expressionistic art or expressionist art. Some people say this film is pro-parenthood. Some people say this film is warning against the struggles of parenthood. Both pro and anti-abortion groups have tried to use this film as an example for their message.
Wow.
So
that is funny.
Yeah. With expressionist art, the audience takes, what they want to interpret of it. And this is, of course, David Lynch claimed this to be his most spiritual film that he ever made. In fact, there's a famous interview where he says, this is, I think, Eraserhead's my most spiritual film. And the interviewer says, can you elaborate on that? And David Lynch says, no. But he actually does elaborate on it a little bit in his book, Catching the Big Fish. He talks about, as you mentioned, film took 5 years to make. And over a certain point, he just kind of like lost the heart of it, or he's like, why am I making this movie again? What is this movie about? And he just lost it. And so one day he opened his Bible and he started reading, and he came to one passage in particular, and he said, "This is it. This is this is describing my film. This is my film right here." And so he was able to get back on track and complete the film. But of course, the bastard said, "I'll never reveal what that passage was." Anyway, son of a bitch.
Oh, it'd be so interesting to know. I want to know so bad.
But it's one of those, it's just one of those movies that is, I guess, hypnotic is what you would say. Like even the opening is just like a whole bunch of like crazy imagery, and as I was talking about earlier, with the intellect, your brain's just working. You're just like, well, what does that mean? Maybe it means this. What does that mean? Maybe it means this. And you start like putting together thoughts. You start thinking about, your own life, or you start thinking about, the world around you, and none of it's wrong. There's no wrong answers here. So I don't mean this in like in the popcorn movie sense, but it's a fun movie to watch in that way, because you're just constantly along for the ride, enjoying these gorgeous visuals, enjoying these sometimes comedic elements of it also.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And you're just working your brain and having kind of like a meditative process along with it all.
Yeah, this movie really surprised me. It was very unexpected in so many ways. Like, well, it's a lot to dive into.
Yeah. What were your initial, because this was your first watch, what were your initial takeaways, or what was your experience like?
Yeah, well, it was really fun because I got Jonathan, my boyfriend, to watch it with me.
A black and white film.
I know. It's crazy. And so that was fun because we ended up being able to kind of talk about what we thought right after, we're like, what the hell was that? But for me, I just immediately was, drawn to the idea of like the overwhelming feeling and fear of parenthood and fatherhood specifically.
Right.
But then my brain also went to kind of like postpartum with Mary's character, because she's clearly depressed in the dinner scene, which is where we learn that she's already had this baby and she's constantly crying. And even when she's with the baby, like there's this scene of her feeding the kid, and you can just sense that there's like a brick wall between them. And she just seems so unhappy throughout the entirety of the film. So that was like kind of the two main things that just immediately came to mind for me. Yeah, then I don't know. It's really fascinating to read all everyone's interpretations of the film as well, because there's so many.
Well, we'll talk about some, but the opening of the movie I want to talk about a little bit, but I don't just want to talk about it plainly. Because guess what, Bella?
What?
We got a new segment. It's
Oh my
called Gimme.
God.
It's called Gimme Three Dubs.
Nice.
You know what? You know what a dub is?
Yeah, like when you have voiceover, or am I thinking of something else?
You are correct, but that's not what I'm referring to. Gimme Three Dubs
Okay.
is Gimme Three W's, also known as a W.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
the
Now I'm following.
the three dubs are watch with weed. This is a movie that should be watched with weed. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read the stream of conscious notes that I took while higher than shit. I mean, higher than fucking giraffe pussy here, while watching the opening sequence of
Oh, I love
Eraserhead.
it. I'm so excited.
Welcome to the Weed Zone. Population 420.
Okay, here we go. Watch with read. Give me three dubs. Okay, opens, and I also wrote this while high, so the penmanship is shit. So forgive me. Opens with what seems to be a planet and man's head. Intensity with camera angle. Planet is overlapping man's head. Are they trying to say that that there's a world inside of our heads? I think so.
Very intuitive.
We start, okay, here we go. Starting to think about imagination. Maybe Lynch made this shot so long and meditative so that we, as the audience, can go into our own minds and see what the story inside of ourselves is telling us.
Whoa.
Whoa. And then
I like that.
And then I got one more thing. Coming out of the hole, I think this is coming out of birth canal. I think sloppy thing going into puddle means jizz.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I actually didn't really understand the opening scene until later, until I was like prepping for this podcast and writing it down. And obviously, there's different interpretations, but I totally can see it as conception and birth.
Right. Well, there you go. Those were my very high scribblings of
I love it.
the opening of Eraserhead. But you talked about the sound. And I think there's
yes.
a lot of the storytelling and what this movie is about can be explained through the sound design of this movie, actually, which is really impressive. David Lynch loved sound. Obviously, his movies are beautiful, but he really did not poo-poo sound.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, there is like this persistent sound design of what it's just like. It sounds kind of like traffic, but it also has nature soundscapes mixed into it, like the ocean and wind. And it goes through like tides and rises and falls and all this kind of stuff. And it creates this kind of like hypnotic, overbearing at times sound of what I would just call noise.
Yeah.
And don't we all just get like the noise constantly of life, just constantly berating us, the noise we all hear, which drives us all mad, And I think there's something to that with the noise that's surrounding this man, and it's just driving him fucking nuts. His fucking baby's crying. There's goddamn noise outside. The goddamn tinking and tankering of the heater,
construction.
Construction. Yeah, all this stuff.
The radiator.
Yeah. So it's the sound design of this movie is really important and strong.
Also so surreal as well. Like one of my favorite moments with the sound design is the scene where Henry is walking through the city back to his apartment. And you've got this kind of windy seashell sound with, the industrial noises of the city. But there's also like even a faint eerie carnival music, like
Right.
faint eerie carnival music playing, then it sounds like it's super far away. And for nearly like 3 minutes straight, we're just watching Henry walk through these streets, and the whole landscape is so bizarre as well. Like there's mounds of dirt in the streets, and he's walking past old pipes and abandoned factories and just filth, and we're just completely immersed in all these like strange sights and sounds. But then at one point, Henry accidentally steps in a puddle, but there's no splash.
Right.
And that's when I realized that there weren't even any footsteps either. Like you hear literally everything else in this world but Henry.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it is just like the sound of his footsteps or a puddle splash, that disconnect between sound and his body just makes everything feel even more bizarre. Like in that moment, I was like, oh, he's a ghost. Because I was just like, what's going on?
Right. You could do a sound pass on this movie and just watch it and just pay attention to the sound. And it would be a very interesting and fulfilling experience, I think.
Totally. It reminded me a lot of Herc Harvey's Carnival of Souls from the 60s.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Have you seen that one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you should check it out. It actually has really similar, that eerie, isolated kind of claustrophobic vibe that Eraserhead has.
Right.
And then it plays a lot into like the ghost theme, but it has just like that constant whooshing wind and then like faint organ music. So I'm curious if it maybe was an influence for this, because it immediately reminded me of it.
So here's a question, Bella. Did you find that baby thing? Did you find it a little cute at all?
Oh my God, yes, I totally do. Like I kept being kind of like, aw.
Right. It's like,
like,
you're disgusting, but kind of cute. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely felt bad for the poor thing. I mean,
certainly.
You're repulsed by it, but yeah, I mean, it's like a little, whatever it is, it's a little baby. And so I definitely I really loved the baby.
Well, that makes one of you.
Yeah. What do you think of the baby?
His parents didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I found myself definitely feeling for it, and it was. I mean, when it gets sick, and it's like within a shot, he like looks at the baby and he turns around and then he turns back around and it's all covered in like disease and freaky shit, and his mouth is open. What in God's name is inside this thing's mouth? It looks like death in there.
Horrible.
And he's like, "Oh my, you are sick." And it's like, yeah.
I loved that scene. Oh my God. Granted, I think things changed for me with the baby. There's a scene towards the end where Henry sees the beautiful woman living across the hall from him that he's kind of obsessed with, coming home with another creep, some other man. And he's like crushed by this. And as he's kind of like walking around his room, the baby starts to cackle. Like even thinking about it is making my skin crawl. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. You need to stop doing that. So I had some highs and lows with the Eraserhead baby, which I think on set they named him Spike.
That makes sense. Cute. So there are some interpretations that the baby is a symbol for the cock.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, towards the end, when shortly after the scene that you just described.
Yeah, because then it all kind of hell breaks loose.
Yeah, he takes the scissors and he cuts open the wrapping or the blanket, and it reveals the insides of this baby thing, which he's basically got 3 organs in there. Yeah. And it kind of looks like 2 testicles, and then the head of the baby is like the head of the penis.
Oh, yeah.
And they stabs it. So there's like a hypothesis that the baby represents his manhood essentially, and him feeling like not a man And then, of course, the baby goes giant, and there's this giant. If you look at it with, I don't know if this is what Lynch was intending, but if you look at this scene thinking about a penis head when the baby becomes a giant head, you're just like, yeah, that does look like a giant penis head. So it's kind of hard to unsee it once you like.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
I read a really I thought it was a pretty cool interpretation of where they gave the film all this lore that seemed to be based on the production design, like the 1940s style department. But then he has a like late 70s record player. And so they took that information and they created this idea that think of Eraserhead as like this whole world as an alternate reality in the early 70s, where like 95% of the US population was wiped out either by, they wrote it as Japanese as revenge for World War II, or by Russians with like Cold War fears coming to life, just based on like the political climate of the 40s. But then we also see, which I actually noticed, and I didn't think much of, I kind of was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. But Henry has a mushroom, like a photograph of like a mushroom cloud,
right,
from an atomic bomb or something hanging on the wall in his apartment. And so I think that's what led them to say that, okay, there was this atomic war that happened when Henry was a child, and they concluded that radiation poisoning and the trauma from the attack is kind of the definitive of his kind of socially awkward personality, and also why he's prone to hallucinations, like the lady in the radiator or the man in the planet, these two bizarre characters that we keep seeing throughout the film. This also explains like most animal life was wiped out by the war, so food is now synthetic or genetically modified, hence the weird tiny chickens,
the weird
for
baby
dinner.
chicken. Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes, though, I can't lie.
I love that the dad, when he introduces these tiny chickens, he's like, I don't know how they make them, but they're new. It's like,
no, the dad is like one of my favorite characters I've ever seen. Anyways, in this atomic war theory, the baby is like the result of 20 years of radiation, altering people's systems. And in the end, Henry kills the baby and then himself, and just this whole thing. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but it's not my favorite, but I like that this person created their own lore based off of like the production design specifically. I thought that was really cool.
Right. I think he had Gimme Three dubs also.
Yeah, yes, definitely. I think so. It gets a little crazy.
but I mean, it makes sense. That's the thing, is like there's no wrong answers, because as you explain that theory, it's like, yeah, I mean, that would totally make sense watching this movie. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
But and it's also great that Lynch doesn't like explain why the world is the way the world is in his movie, because I took it all as kind of like allegorical of like, this is the way the world is, just to a heightened extent, even the way that people talk, the way that he converses with the in-laws is all very flat and robotic. And I'm just like, oh, because this is kind of like how we talk when we're so afraid to open up and actually talk about our feelings. So we're just like cardboard cutouts being like, how are you? What's your line of work? Printing's your game, eh? It's like, it's all meaningless. But his theory is just as, or their theory is just as,
like valid,
reputable. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I got really into watching some YouTube videos like of interviews around the time that it came out. Because there's quite a few. There's actually a really cool video of this person interviewing people like right outside of the theater after watching it. And it's hilarious. Like some of them are like, loved it, best movie of the whole year. And others are like, I want to kill the guy who made this. But within all of that, I don't know, I couldn't figure out what his name was, but he actually gets the chance to interview David Lynch talking about the film, and he asks him, "Why are you so strange?" A question that David Lynch has probably been asked countless times throughout his entire career.
I did want to ask you that you have such a nice wife and such a nice little girl, and I was wondering how such a nice normal existence, and you're so strange.
Well, I'm not all that strange, really. And also, everybody beneath a lot of times a calm exterior is, the subconscious, right? And that's where everyone has their little, well, not little, the denizens of the deep and all that. And this film, a lot of people say, is a real sort of subconscious experience. It unearths things that are inside of people. So it's sort of like a dream, the dream theme again too.
And I just love this response so much because I think it's the perfect articulation of like what Eraserhead is and what it does. And yet he does all of this without ever even giving you like a clear answer, true Lynchian fashion. He's just like, I mean, you could even have your own interpretation of what he's saying right here. For me, I kind of interpreted this as him saying, being human means having a subconscious, and having a subconscious is already weird as fuck in itself. Right. So if we all have that inside of us, then essentially we're all a little bit weird or strange to a certain extent. And yeah, I just think Eraserhead is like the perfect example of art that either allows you or forces you to bring all of that stuff right to the surface, and that feeling, that emotion, and whatever thought process accompanies it can be totally different for everyone. And that just makes me love this movie even more. Like, to create something as dark and twisted as this can make people really feel something so personal to them. And that's beautiful to me, especially as like a horror fan. Obviously, I feel like a lot of this is coming from my horror heart. All right, on to the next. Yep. We've got another David Lynch staple up next, jumping all the way to 1986 with Kyle MacLachlan, Isabella Rossellini, Laura Dern, and Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet, named after the Lana Del Rey song. No, I thought so when I was little. No, it's named after the original song from 1950 by Bernie Wayne and Lee Morris, a song that has been re-recorded many times by many artists since. And the one that is the most popular is the one featured in this. It's Bobby Vinton's rendition from 1963. Such a banger. Lynch actually really struggled to get this movie made. One, because it was right after Dune flopped in 1984. His take on the original Dune didn't really please audiences the way that Denis has. And a lot of studios were also completely turned off by Blue Velvet's intense sexual and violent content. But ultimately, the film landed Lynch his second Oscar nomination for Best Director, his first being for The Elephant Man. And he ended up taking home the year's Best Film and Best Director prizes from the National Society of Film Critics as well. And so critics were initially extremely divided on this film, but it has since gone down in history as one of the greatest films of all time and has the ultimate cult following as well. So in the film, Kyle MacLachlan stars as Jeffrey Beaumont, a college kid back home in Lumberton, North Carolina, after his father's sudden stroke. On his way home from the hospital, he discovers a severed human ear lying in a field near his house. So he takes it to police detective John Williams, where he ends up meeting the detective's daughter, Sandy, played by the radiant Laura Dern. Oh, so beautiful. And arguably her breakout role as well. So they get talking, and Sandy happens to know a key piece in the puzzle. The ear is somehow tied to a nightclub singer named Dorothy Valens, played by the mesmerizing Isabella Rossellini, also in her breakout role. And completely unhinged by his own curiosity, Jeffrey decides to break into Dorothy's apartment. And his snooping takes a dangerous and really creepy turn when she unexpectedly returns home and discovers him hiding in her closet. Things spiral even more out of control when a surprise visitor knocks on the door, and Jeffrey's immediately stuffed back into the closet. Enter Frank Booth, a maniacal force of chaos and evil, played by Dennis Hopper, easily one of the most unforgettable performances and villains in cinematic history, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey narrowly avoids being discovered, but from that moment on, he's caught in this increasingly dark and twisted web of secrets, obsession, and violence that will just change his life forever. So, Nick, what do you think of Blue Velvet? How many times have you seen this one? I'm curious.
How many times have I seen Blue Velvet? Not as many as you would think. I've seen it like probably 5 times or something.
Oh, that's a good amount.
There is a Blue Velvet poster, not only in Sonja and I's home, but in the motherfucking living room.
I love it.
We have a Blue Velvet poster in the living room.
That's awesome.
And that has been there since before I even came into Sonja's life. She had that poster in there. So Sonja is a big fan of this film, and I am as well, obviously. This movie makes more sense the more times I watch it, and it gets more disturbing, actually, the more times I watch it. You think it'd be the opposite, where it would stop disturbing me, but it actually affects me more and more each time I watch it. And I think it's probably the Lynch film that I revisit the least for that reason.
Yeah.
And not so much for like the sexual perversion or the violence and stuff, which those things are upsetting for sure. But, you know, it just being a commentary on America and the American dream. And the underbelly of this Reagan's version of America, you know, and and that it will get you and it will hurt you and it will fuck you up. And maybe perhaps it was especially intense watching this version or on this rewatch, because I was like, fucking A, maybe we are starting to actually feel the repercussions of all of that right now. So anyways, it is unquestionably a masterpiece. As you said, Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth is just, he's almost as psychotic as Dennis Hopper was in real life. But yeah, one of the most sadistic and evil and memorable villains in cinema history.
It's amazing to create such a disturbing villain who's also like one of the funniest characters I've ever seen in a movie.
Absolutely.
Like that already is just so mind-boggling in itself.
In fact, Bella, I got Gimme Three quotes by Frank Booth.
Yes. I was hoping you would.
The best Frank Booth quotes of the movie.
Oh, yeah. You know what time it is. It's time for some movie quotes. You know what gets me going? Quotes from my favorite movies. We're coming for you, baby.
Number 1, the one that gets me every friggin' time. Pops my ass off. Frank Booth has kidnapped, what's his face?
Jeffrey.
Yeah, see, I don't even remember that guy's name.
No. I only remember because I have it right in front of me.
He kidnaps Jeffrey, shoving him around. We're going to have some beer, Jeffrey. What's your favorite beer?
Come on. I want you to meet a friend of mine. Hey, Raymond, you get enough beer for Ben, too. What kind of beer do you like? Heineken. Heineken? Fuck that shit! Pabst Blue Ribbon!
That is my favorite.
So anytime, Bella, you're at a bar and somebody orders Heineken, you go, Heineken? Fuck that shit.
It's so iconic. We quote that. I quote that so much. Yeah, anytime there's a chance, it's the best.
connected to the beer.
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
Quote number 2. They're at Ben's place, and it's so uncomfortable, and there's all these dames that are just totally brain dead, it seems like. And, and Ben's like, go get the beer, you know? And it's, you know, he's all upset. He's like, where's the beer? I need beer. It's cold, otherwise I'm going to puke. So anyways, she finally brings the glasses. He's got all these cold glasses out. And he goes, where's the fucking beer? And his one of his henchmen is like, it's right here, Frank. And he picks up 2 beers and he goes, do you want me to pour it? And Frank goes, no, I want you to fuck it. Shit, yes, pour it.
He's so aggressive, beyond aggressive. Like, that word doesn't even encapsulate everything that he is.
It is so, it just gets me every single time.
So funny.
I want you to fuck it. Because it puts the visual of somebody fucking beer into your mind. Yeah. It works on so many levels.
So good.
Okay, and then finally, of course, we have to put it in because one of the most twisted and fucked up lines of ever.
Yep.
Mommy. Oh, mommy. 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 Mommy loves you. Baby wants to fuck.
It's so bad.
While staring down her
Dorothy.
Spread open legs and huffing on an oxygen mask. Baby wants to fuck.
It's horrible.
Unforgettable images.
Yeah, no, truly. Seared into the brain. There's no forgetting that.
No.
I think one of my favorites that he says that I just like, what the fuck does that mean? Is he's like, you stay alive, baby. Do it for Van Gogh. I was like, what?
Well, Van Gogh, I think, is in reference to her husband, because they cut off his ear.
Oh my God, that's so good. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
This is why we do this podcast. Yeah. I also shout out Ben. Suave, man. You're so fucking suave.
Yeah, Dean Stockwell has been.
Yeah, he really is so suave, but he's also like really scary at the same time. He looks like a vampire too.
He's all made up. And then his performance of his lip syncing performance of Roy Orbison's In Dreams.
Oh.
Once you see a Lynch movie, you never listen to Roy Orbison the same way.
Yeah. I know, seriously, especially this one. Like, I love that song, but it's forever Blue Velvet now.
It says so much about the picture, and it adds, like, I mean, when you read the lyrics of In Dreams, and you're just like, fuck, it is kind of heavy, you know? It's like, it's a heavy, heavy song, and the context of which Lynch uses it really, because Frank Booth says, in dreams, he like speaks the lyrics as Orbison is singing them. Yeah. He says, in dreams, I walk with you. In dreams, I talk to you. In dreams, you're all mine all of the time. And you're just like, oh man, because he's so evil and sadistic, it's like freaky as fuck. Yeah. But at the end of the movie, when they utilized one of the other songs that they use in the movie, Blue Velvet, Rossellini is finally, you see her reunited with her son and she's hugging him and it's like, oh, that's great. But then she sings like the last lyrics of Blue Velvet, which are like, I'll see blue velvet through my tears. And it just like reminds you like, oh man, she is going to be fucking haunted by this dude. Yeah. Forever.
Oh, it's so,
ever.
That ending makes me cry.
Yeah. Oh,
it really does.
It's so heavy, man. It's so heavy. That's a damn good song.
I love the way he wove these iconic songs like directly into the screenplay and everything. It's so brilliant. Like I don't know that I've seen that before in anything else, to be honest, or at least not anything I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, tons of filmmakers do it, but it's through the Lynchian lens that just
exactly. That's what I mean.
To play the song that you just played, not 5 minutes earlier in the film, because we see Dean Stockwell do his performance of In Dreams, and then they drive Jeffrey and Dorothy out to the country, and they pull them out, and they're beating the shit out of them, and they play it again. And not only do they play it again and have these like incredibly violent acts happening over it, but you have this chick just dancing and fucking gyrating on the top of the car. It's like there's a lot happening and a lot being said in this scene.
Yeah.
And the song is aiding it, and the imagery is aiding it, and the actions are aiding it, and it's all depiction of the underbelly of Reagan's America.
Totally. And he like changes the songs from what they used to be or how they used to feel when you would listen to them before having seen Blue Velvet.
Right.
Well, we've talked about the end. I also want to talk about the opening sequence and the opening credits even. I've never seen such like simple opening credits just set the tone so perfectly for a film. That's kind of a bold statement, but that's truly how I feel. Like every single tiny detail just perfectly defines the atmosphere and really pulls you in. Like I was just immediately hooked right from the very start. You know, we've got the late great composer and longtime collaborator with Lynch, Angelo Badalamenti, as well, created this magnificent orchestral theme that just completely washes over you. And I'm a big score fan, as everyone knows. So if any of you out there are as well, this is definitely a score you should listen to. It's beautiful. And this was actually the first collaboration with Badalamenti and Lynch. And after this, they obviously went on to work together and with many, many more of Lynch's films. And obviously Badalamenti's most famous work is the iconic theme song for Twin Peaks. But anyways, side rant. For Blue Velvet, Lynch wanted the score to be like the Russian composer Shostakovich, and he was listening to Shostakovich's 15th Symphony while writing the film, and apparently he would even like blast it on speakers while filming, which I just love to imagine. All he told Badalamenti was to make the score very Russian, the most beautiful thing in the world, but also dark and a little bit scary. And I love that because that's exactly what he did. You can hear all of that just in this opening or main theme, whatever. You've just got this gorgeous, enthralling theme playing, and all we can see on screen are these crinkled but shimmering dark blue velvet curtains billowing in the background, and the simple cursive of the opening credits. It sounds so dumb as I'm saying it. I feel like words can't really capture or describe the feeling all of this evokes from you watching it, but it's just so atmospheric and mysterious, and it also has this kind of old Hollywood vibe to it. I just think it works so well. I love those opening credits so much. One of my favorites.
Angelo Badalamenti was playing the piano in the scene where Dorothy's singing Blue Velvet, you know, in the club.
Oh yeah.
But he's playing the piano there. And when they were filming, Badalamenti kept like asking crew members like, where's the camera going to be? Where's the how wide is it going to be? All this stuff. So finally they get the shot up, and Badalamenti's over there playing the piano, and he like scooches his booth in so he could be in the shot more. David Lynch is like, you fucking ham. You're a son of a bitch. It's like, this shot is not about you. It's about Isabella Rossellini, bro.
Yeah, that is so funny. Well, luckily she is a true star because I didn't even notice him. No offense, Angelo. No offense, Angelo. Sorry about it.
Why are there people like Frank? Why is there so much trouble in this world?
I don't know. fact, it was the night I met you. In the dream, there was our world, and the world was dark because there weren't any robins, and the robins represented love. And for the longest time, there was just this darkness. And all of a sudden, thousands of robins were set free, and they flew down and brought this blinding light of love. And it seemed like that love would be the only thing that would make any difference. And it did. So I guess it means there is trouble till the robins come.
You're a neat girl.
So are you. You're a neat guy.
I wasn't ready for this movie when I first watched it. It just was too disturbing for me, rightly so, I would say. Definitely content warning to anyone who wants to watch this film. It's extremely disturbing. But the second time around, was an entirely different experience for me. You know, even knowing what is about to happen, you still notice new things and you see things in a different light. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the performances, the music, obviously. I love the cinematography in this film. Like, I need your technical insight, Nick, because I don't know what word to use here, but it feels super stretched in certain scenes. Like, it looks so long, horizontally, if that makes any sense.
It's just wide. They're using wide lenses.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just was like, I want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, they're using wide lenses, and in my interpretation of it is to show how empty everything is. The streets, the neighborhood, even Dorothy's apartment. They use a very wide lens that is Jeffrey's POV when he's like hiding in the closet. And the wide lens works for a POV because it's supposed to mimic, somebody's point of view, somebody's eyesight. Yeah. But I think they're also using it to kind of like show the emptiness that is within her because she's lost her, her family. And then just, this modern version of America that is so clean, so pristine, but ultimately empty and lifeless.
Yeah, broken.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the few of Lynch's films that's not in that Criterion Collection block. So I believe it is available to stream on Max. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where I watched it.
Okay, cool. Check it out on Max. There's also a great Blu-ray available of it. So check it out. Let us know what you think. We are going to take a quick break, everybody. And during that break, you are going to hear from Gimme Three producer, LADFF Festival director, and my wife, Sonja Mereu, for a segment we call Sonja's Movie Minute. All that and much, much more right here on the Gimme Three podcast.
Hello, I'm Sonja, and this is my Movie Minute. When I was a kid, I thought David Lynch was related to me. I even think I told some people he was my uncle. By that point, I may have known it wasn't true. I don't remember. Or maybe if we tracked our lineages back to Ireland, we are distantly related. After all, he's a Lynch, and my mom's side of the family are Lynches, so anything's possible. Setting aside our possible shared ancestry, I love David Lynch's films. I've had a Blue Velvet poster on my wall for the last 20 years, and I'll never see a Heineken or a Pabst Blue Ribbon without thinking of him. I'll never hear Roy Orbison or the Pixies without thinking of him. I'll certainly never drive by Johnny's coffee shop without thinking of him, which, in another case of mistaken identity or unfounded assumption on my part, I thought was the diner from that creepy scene in Mulholland Drive. I've since learned that that diner was actually Caesar's in Gardena. But I still think of that scene every time I'm on the corner of Fairfax and Wilshire. David Lynch changed the way I watch movies. He opened up my mind to what a film can be and do. He used music and color in the most memorable ways. He made Kyle MacLachlan an icon. He made the most confounding movie I've ever seen. I love David Lynch, and I will cherish every piece of art that he made. I'll even try to watch Inland Empire again, which I still don't expect to understand, and that's okay. His movies aren't meant to be put in a box. They're not meant to be understood. They're meant to help get your mind out of the box. And now that he can't deny it, maybe I'll start claiming him as my uncle again. Rest in peace, and thank you, Uncle David.
We are celebrating the life and the work of the enigmatic, the brilliant, and the fun. I'd say the fun. Mr. David Lynch. Yeah. Before the break, we discussed Eraserhead and Blue Velvet. But right now we are going to talk about Mulholland Drive. We're bringing it home with Mulholland Drive from 2001. Written and directed by David Lynch, starring Naomi Watts, Laura Herring, and Justin Theroux. Of the three films that we are talking about today, the plot on this one is probably the most perplexing. It's the one that plays with time the most. It's the one that's the most, ethereal. See, I'm getting to use all my big boy words today, Bella.
Yeah, for real. I love it. Very poetic.
So, long story short, I'm not going to do a deep dive or go too heavy on the plot because figuring out the plot is like half of the fun of this film.
Yeah.
But if Blue Velvet is Lynch's portrayal of the American dream turning into a nightmare, then Mulholland Drive is the portrayal of the Hollywood dream turning into a nightmare. For our listeners who do not live in Los Angeles, Mulholland Drive is a road that runs above Hollywood. It's very windy. It's filled with twists and turns. And the deeper you go into it, the darker it gets, which is, an apt description for the film Mulholland Drive.
I love that.
The film follows a young blonde actress played by Naomi Watts, who arrives in LA to go for it. She wants to become an actress. In the first few days of her arriving in the city, she meets a brunette bombshell with no memory of who she is. This is Laura Herring. And she falls in love with this brunette bombshell. And she wants to help this woman spark her memory so she can discover who she is. She also gets some auditions, including, an audition of a lifetime with a director who's making a movie to save his life, quite literally. So she's got love. She's got mystery. She's got a potential, dream job coming her way. And she's got blue LA skies all in the midst of it. She is living the dream, as they say. Or is she living in a dream? Or are we living in her dream? What does this character's world look like outside of this dream? Tune in to Mulholland Drive this Saturday to find out. Anyways, Bella, your thoughts on Mulholland Drive?
Oh, man. Jesus Christ, David Lynch. I mean, I just wrote down this movie is like an enchanting heart attack, if that makes any sense at all. I can 100% see why people regard this as some of his best work and one of the greatest films of all time. I've said that about all three, but it's true. This movie is it's something else. There's really nothing else like it. I was completely mesmerized throughout the entire thing. And that ending sent me into shock, quite literally. I mean, yeah, I was speechless, completely brain broken as the credits rolled. I was like, I have no fucking idea what just happened, but all I know is I feel both sad and kind of euphoric a little bit. Like I felt like I was floating.
Yeah.
All the dreamy stuff.
Right.
A very Lynchian feeling, I would say. But yeah, at first I didn't even really, I mean, this was my first time watching it. To be honest, I didn't even clock the dream aspect.
Yeah.
I thought, and this I guess is spoilers for Christopher Nolan's Memento. So a warning to all of our listeners who haven't seen that one yet. But I thought that in the ending, when Naomi Watts' Dark Diane character gives Camilla's headshot to one of these like bad guys that we've seen throughout the film,
Right.
that she set up this like murder, and then the car crash just happened to happen, which causes Camilla's amnesia. And I thought that somehow she like figured this out and then was disguising herself as Betty, the very idealistic woman we see in the beginning, to just try to get Camilla back into her life and create this kind of dreamy, perfect life for herself. So I kind of thought, at first I thought the story was just told backwards,
right,
and that the ending was like the beginning. So yeah, I thought like the power dynamic with Camilla as a famous actress and kind of manipulative lover to Diane, which we see in the end, flips, and now Betty has power over her as Rita. If that makes any sense. Probably only to people who have watched this movie.
Yeah.
So sorry to our listeners who are like, what the fuck are you talking about? You make no sense at all. But then I actually went back and rewatched some of the beginning because I was just so lost. And I had totally forgotten about that one little POV shot of someone going to sleep.
Yeah, there's a show. One of the first images of the movie is like a handheld camera panning across pillows. And it kind of like fades to black.
And you fall asleep into the dream. And so I was like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. And then I even noticed, because I kept watching a little bit, because I was like, I really don't know what happened. Right when Betty meets Rita, we'll call her Rita, Camilla, whatever, the brunette in the beginning, she's rambling about how excited she is to be in LA. And she says,
she's letting me stay here while she's working on a movie that's being made in Canada. But I guess you already know that. Well, I couldn't afford a place like this in a million years. Unless, of course, I'm discovered and become a movie star. Well, of course, I'd rather be known as a great actress than a movie star. But, you know, sometimes people end up being both. So that is, I guess you'd say, sort of why I came here. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited to be here. I mean, I just came here from Deep River, Ontario, and now I'm in this dream place. Well, you can imagine how I feel.
And I noticed this time around that as soon as she says dream place, this ominous, haunting score quietly builds. And the first time I watched it, I kind of just attributed that to Rita. I was like, oh, because maybe she's lying to her, or, you know, she's this mysterious, potentially dangerous person. But on the rewatch, I was like, oh, it's because Betty has just exposed that she's in a dream, and the reality of everything is much, much darker than what we're seeing here. So I loved that little detail as well. But yeah, those were just my initial thoughts watching Mulholland Drive. But
yeah,
how about you?
There's a lot of, when you watch it multiple times, there's a lot of clues that it's a dream or why it's a dream and all this kind of stuff. But it takes several rewatches to kind of pick up on all of them. I'll just talk about a few of my favorite ones.
Yeah, please.
In her dream, in dreams, here we go again.
In dreams.
In dreams, she's able to explain away a lot of the reasons why she did not become a star. Diane / Betty / Blonde. We'll call her Blonde because it's going to be
that's easiest.
easier to describe for the listeners. Blondie is able to explain away a lot of the reasons why she didn't become a star in her dreams.
Mm-hmm.
The director wanted to cast her But he was forced to cast Camila because he was involved in this totally ridiculous mob story. So that was the reason why she didn't get cast. Not because she wasn't good enough, but because he was being threatened with his life. And then the other director that she worked with, Bob Booker, I think they call him in the film. The scene where she has the great audition that like floors everybody in the room except for the director.
Right.
When we come out of the dream, we learn that director, she actually did work with that director and did a movie with Camila, the brunette, in that movie. And the first thing somebody says is, oh man, Camila is so good in that movie. They don't say anything that she's that good in that movie, but Camila is so good in that movie. So in her dream, she portrays Bob Booker as this like complete incompetent dingbat who doesn't, who essentially does not recognize talent when it's presented right in front of him. So there's all these little clues and tips and tricks once you watch the movie as many times as I've watched it, which is far too many. Even without knowing all that kind of stuff and without picking up on all that stuff, it's still mesmerizing and it's still hypnotizing and it's still very Los Angeles. Very Los Angeles. There's a lot of connections between this film and a couple of other films. There is, of course, Sunset Boulevard, which one of the all-time great film noir movies, one of the all-time great American movies ever.
I love that movie.
But a lot of connections between Betty/Diane/Blondie and Norma Desmond, who Norma Desmond's character in Sunset Boulevard is an actress who's fallen from grace and is well past her prime and clinging to any sense of stardom or fame, or she's gone off relevance. Relevance. Yeah. She's gone off her rocker. And Betty/Diane/Blondie, Naomi Watts, gets out of her car when she first arrives on the back lot to go to her first audition, and she's all bright-eyed and all excited. They cut to her POV, and she looks at the lot, and on the other side of the gate is a car that very closely resembles Norma Desmond's car from Sunset Boulevard.
Way.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. I love that.
And then, of course, you got Mulholland Drive, Sunset Boulevard. It's two Hollywood streets. And then you got Vertigo, the Alfred Hitchcock film, which there's a lot of connections with Vertigo. A lot of both films involve, mystery that has to do with the identity of the love interest and trying to morph somebody's love interest into the hero, trying to morph the love interest into the perfect person that they want. Both movies, they like change the brunette's hair to like this blonde hair. Naomi Watts even wears a gray suit when they are, trying to solve the mystery. And it resembles very closely the gray suit that Kim Novak wears throughout a lot of Vertigo. So anyways, again, this is like one of those movies that's just like a puzzle that you could just keep poking at and peeling away and finding new layers and finding new meanings. Kind of like the other two movies we talked about. Like there's 6 interpretations and hypothesis of everything that this movie means. And they're all cool. They're all fun. They're all awesome. It's just fun to kind of come up with your own tale and your own reasoning for this whole thing.
I can't wait to like come back to this film time and time again.
I do have here 3 pieces of trivia. Give me 3 pieces of trivia here for Vertigo. Oh, sorry. See, I screwed myself up. It's not Vertigo we're talking about. We're talking about Mulholland Drive.
I want to play a game. I want to play a game.
There is one of the most impactful scenes, and it's also one of the most enigmatic scenes. It's like one of those scenes that still like is kind of gets me scratching my head and be like, what in the fuck is happening here? It is a scene where both ladies go to some late night show at Club Silencio.
Yes.
And they watch this singer perform a song that deeply affects both women. They're crying their eyes out. Naomi Watts' character even starts like convulsing and shit. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
But the singer at Club Silencio, Rebecca Del Rio, she first met David Lynch. Talent agent friend of his was like, you got to meet this Rebecca Del Rio girl. So on a whim, they all kind of met up at a recording studio. And Lynch asked her, hey, could you, sing a song for me? And so she performed impromptu this Spanish version of Roy Orbison's Crying, Llorando, which also on a whim, without her even knowing, the audio engineer just decided to hit record and record the performance. And that recording, minus a few tweaks here and there, is the same recording that is used in this movie, Mulholland Drive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That actually gives me chills just with like the full context of that scene.
Yeah.
And you can feel like, oh, that's amazing.
Because it's such a like bone chilling but beautiful and soaring performance. It's like you've never heard singing this beautiful in your life.
Never. Yeah,
exactly. It's out of this world. It's like booming and soft, and it's all the things that are excellent about vocal performance. It's all right there, and it just happened. I mean, David Lynch said it wasn't like 5 minutes that we came into this place that she just started doing that. Like, I mean, she just came in off the street and was like, here's this. It's like, fucking A.
Amazing.
Rebecca Del Rio. Piece of trivia number 2. David Lynch initially resisted Studio Canal, which is like a French production company, studio. They offered a bunch of money to complete Mulholland Drive because Mulholland Drive was originally supposed to be a television show.
Oh, yeah.
That was going to be produced by ABC. They started, they were making the pilot, essentially. The beginnings of this movie and some of the bits of this movie were from a pilot that was being shot in 1999. So they were going to turn this into a show. ABC also made Twin Peaks. Originally, he was like, I don't want to turn it into a feature because Studio Canal was like, okay, the show's not going to pan out. ABC was like, we don't want this. So they're like, you know what? Why don't we make it a movie? And David Lynch did not want to do it. So finally, he decided to revisit the film, and he discovered that like all the sets had been destroyed. All of like the costumes and props had been released by ABC.
Oh my God.
So basically, like they had nothing, from what they had already done previously. So it was a huge, huge setback. But Lynch said it was actually a blessing in disguise because he was able to do, he went in, he did his transcendental meditation. He's a big transcendental meditation guy. And he got into his transcendental meditation and he discovered all these new ideas about the characters and about the film. And he was able to come up with a satisfying conclusion of the story, which Naomi Watts said, I was so thrilled with because in the TV version of Mulholland Drive, she felt that her character was very flat. So she was like, this new film cinema version, it added so many layers to the character that did not previously exist. So,
oh my God, yeah.
So cool.
And she went crazy.
She went cray cray.
Every single version of them.
She went cray cray.
Yeah. Yeah, quite literally.
Okay, and then the third piece of trivia, this is some nerdy shit.
I love it.
So when all the film reels got sent out and distributed to the movie theaters, they included a computer-written photocopied note from David Lynch himself with special instructions to all the projectionists worldwide because he did not want the film to be centered vertically when projected, but he wanted to allow more overhead, which is like a projectionist slang that says like, allow the top part of the frame to be a little bit more visible than the bottom part of the frame. And this was because the film was originally, parts of the movie were originally made for TV. So the aspect ratio was a little kind of funky. So without the projectionist manual correction of, some of this stuff, the aspect ratio of the theatrical release would have people's heads essentially would have been cut off. They would have gotten a haircut, as we call it in the biz. Don't give them a haircut.
Oh my God.
So, and Lynch also said you got to raise the volume of the theater sound system by 3 decibels, when the film is playing, because maybe that's a TV thing. I don't know. But anyways, and then the note ended with your friend, David Lynch. So,
oh, I love that.
So anyways, that's some hardcore nerdy shit, but I found it fascinating.
No, that's amazing. That's what nerdy shit is, what this podcast is all about. That is
so there you go. Give me 3 pieces of trivia for not Vertigo, but Mulholland Drive. We'll do Vertigo one of these days.
Oh, we have to. Another banger.
Yeah.
I think one scene we have to talk about is the jump scare. The jump scare.
Oh, dude. So it got you, right?
What the hell?
Describe the scene, and then I want to hear your reaction to it.
Yeah. The scene is we have these 2 characters sitting in a diner, and one of them is talking about this dream, or for better words, nightmare that he has.
They start out that I'm in here, but it's not day or night. It's kind of half night, But it looks just like this, except for the light. And I'm scared like I can't tell you. Of all people, you're standing right over there. By that counter. You're in both dreams. And you're scared. I get even more frightened when I see how afraid you are, and then I realize what it is. There's a man in back of this place. He's the one who's doing it. I can see him through the wall. I can see his face. I hope that I never see that face ever outside of a dream. That's it.
So, you came to see if he's out there.
To get rid of this god-awful feeling.
Right then.
And his friend's like, all right, well, so we're here to, make sure it's not real, kind of. So, let's go check it out. And we have the longest scene of just this guy slowly walking outside of the restaurant, walking all the way to the back by the dumpsters and stuff like that. And there's this wall, and we get a POV shot just inching closer and closer and closer. And it takes so goddamn long that you're just like, oh my God, what is going on? And just as you're about to turn the corner to see whatever is behind this wall, the face comes to you straight from behind, and it's so unexpected, and you only see it for a brief second, and then we see this man just literally collapse, and he dies of a heart attack or something. And he's like, oh. Yeah, he's just gone, shivering. And then it flashes back to the face again, and they go behind the wall once more, and you're just like, I have no idea what I just saw. I mean, it's I don't even know how to put into words. It's this character with like covered in mud almost, it seems. And
it looks like a homeless
or like
person who's been burnt alive.
burnt to a crisp. Yeah, exactly. It's so disturbing and unexpected. And I actually watched a really cool YouTube video essay by this guy Pentix Productions, and he is talking about how he thinks this is the ultimate jump scare, like the best jump scare of all time.
Right.
And he pointed out how, like, as you're walking with this guy to the wall, which I think goes on for at least like a minute and a half, like it's seriously so, it feels so dragged out. When it switches to his POV, the camera like turns to this payphone, and it's like, okay, that's his moment of being like, okay, I could stop and call for help. And then it turns and looks at this sign on the restaurant that says entrance with an arrow pointing backwards to like another door.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like a symbol of being like, turn around, like very Alice in Wonderland vibes to me. And I just thought that was amazing. Like those little details that you wouldn't really give much thought, but when you do, you're like, oh, that's so brilliant and so creepy. And just builds the tension.
And I could be wrong about this, so I apologize if I am, but I don't think, like a lot of jump scares in horror movies, they do this kind of like cheap, I will call it cheap thing, where they build some tension with the score or the music or sound effects, and then they just pull all the music and sound effects out. So it's just silent.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we know the jump scare is coming,
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
You don't really know that the jump scare is coming with this because he doesn't try and hide the score or anything. It's there. Like he gives you a punch of the score when the tramp comes from behind the wall, but he doesn't like, it's also in broad daylight. This is happening. Like, it's not like in like dark alley and it's nighttime and you're hidden by shadows. Like this is all happening in broad daylight and it still scares the bejesus out of you.
Almost scarier. Somehow like the daytime makes it scarier to me.
And this scene, I think haunts Sonja to this day. She talks about how much this scene fucked her up the first time she saw this movie, and it stuck with her.
You can't shake that jump scare. You can't shake it. And it's so brilliant because it happens like at the beginning of the film. I think we're like 12 minutes into the movie, and all of a sudden we're in this guy's dream or waking dream, whatever it is. You have this intense like physical reaction, and then it just goes right back to whatever it's doing, and so you're like already just on edge the whole time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The theory is that the tramp is supposed to represent failure, which is, for people in Los Angeles, the scariest thing imaginable.
Yeah. What is up with the blue box?
I don't exactly know. It could be what is referred to as a MacGuffin. Something that is meant to lead the audience down a path, and you think it means something, but it's actually a gateway into something that means something more.
Right.
In the ending, in literally the final moments of the film, when Diane /Betty /Blondie, Naomi Watts, is having a fucking meltdown. Yeah. She is out of her dream. She is having a meltdown, and she is being haunted by the old people who were in her dream, helped her out at the airport when, in her dream, she was all bright-eyed and arrived at the airport. And these people probably represent either her parents or, some people who were nice to her when she first came to LA and were, made her feel like, I'm in LA, anything is possible. And
I can do this.
I can do this. And that has not been how it has gone for her. So she's haunted by these people, and they're still smiling as they're coming at her. They're like, "Ah, yeah."
Oh, it's
and
so
she's
creepy.
freaking the fuck out. And she's like, "Ah!" And she goes in her room, and she goes into her drawer, and she pulls a gun. And for a split second, you can see the blue box there in right next to the gun as she's pulling the gun out, and she kills herself. My theory is that, when you dream, you like pull things from real life and put them into your dream that it doesn't really make sense.
It's like unconsciously.
Yeah.
Like you don't really
So like
think about it until you do, maybe.
The name Betty she pulled from the waitress's name tag, and then she is like, all right, up them the subconscious took that name and put it there,
right?
David's mother, Coco, in her dream she decided to take David the director's mother's face and make that her landlord.
Right.
So in real life, she pulls the gun that ends up being her demise. And I think that blue box being next to the gun that kills her, she puts that in her dream as a sign of darkness, a sign of perhaps the end. And it's that blue box that ends up taking them over to Club Silencio. And Club Silencio is, of course, where the beginning of the end starts. Anyways, that's just my interpretation of it. I don't know if that's right. There's also a scene in all of the mayhem and chaos and shit where we see that scary, spooky tramp again. And she's in Naomi Watts' room just holding the blue box.
With the box, right?
So,
scary.
Yeah. Anyways, that's just ideas. Who knows? Well, Mulholland Drive, check it out, my friends. It is available on Criterion Channel, and there's a great Criterion Edition Blu-ray available as well. Tons of amazing special features and interviews on those and on the Criterion Channel right now. So check all of that stuff out. Let us know what you think of Mulholland Drive. Do you have different interpretations, than us about what the blue box means? Let us know. Let us know what you think of Eraserhead, Blue Velvet. We want to hear your theories about all this kind of stuff. Let us know what your favorite David Lynch film is. Let us know what your favorite David Lynch quote is. You can do all that by scrolling down to our episode description and clicking on the link that says, send us a text message. Click that link and you can send us a text message. You go right into our inbox, and hell, we may even read it right here on the air. You can also message us on Instagram. Go to Instagram and type in Gimme Three Podcast. That's GIMME spell out 3 podcast. Gimme Three Podcast. You can slide into our DMs there, and you can see a bunch of the amazing videos and pics that Bella makes as well. And speaking of Bella, tell the folks where they can find you on the socials medias.
You guys can find me on Instagram at Portrait of a Cinephile or on Letterboxd at Efstratis. That's just B and then my last name, Efstratis.
You can find me on Letterboxd, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Nicholas Ybarra. Ybarra is spelled with a Y. Or if you want to go to the cesspool known as Twitter, also known as X, you can find me at Nicholas P. Ybarra, and the P stands for Phantasmic.
Love.
Thank you all for listening to the Gimme Three podcast, and we will see you at the movies.